with this we move on to the second force. The second force which determines how attractive an industry is, right? This is rivalry among companies. Rivalry among companies obviously will determine how attractive an industry is, because if it's an industry where there is fierce rivalry between companies, then what will happen? There will be price wars, right? Price wars are damaging for profitability, and therefore it's not an attractive industry for your company to enter. What is it that leads to rivalry among companies? There are several factors like competitive structure, which means really if you have some large companies, some small companies, if you have many large companies, right? If you have a few large companies, all that makes a difference to how attractive the industry is, because it makes an impact on the rivalry within the industry. Rate of growth is another major factor. Any industry which is growing rapidly, right, has low rivalry among companies within that industry and is hence an attractive industry. Product characteristics. If products like for instance Dettol, right, brand loyalty is possible. Products like cement, brand loyalty is not possible. Now, if brand loyalty is possible, then rivalry is low. If brand loyalty is not possible, rivalry is high. You only need to look at the antiseptics industry and the cement industry to see how this applies. Amount of fixed costs, that's another factor which determines rivalry among companies, because the more the fixed costs, the more important it is for the company to sell something at some price to earn a revenue, to meet their fixed costs, which means the company will try and sell its product at the cheapest possible rate, because it has a high amount of fixed costs which it has spent to set up that enterprise. Then size of capacity increase. That's another factor which leads to rivalry among companies. Here the issue is, let's look at a steel plant, right? Now, a steel plant is such that if you need to set up a integrated steel plant, you need to set it up for 3 or 4 million tons, right? You can't set it up for 10,000 tons. You can't set up an integrated steel plant for 10,000 tons, right? Because of that, supply increases suddenly. If you were to enter the industry, you would set up a plant for 4 million tons. But what about demand? Demand does not increase in quite that manner. For demand to increase by 4 million tons, it would take perhaps 3 years or 5 years. So during that time, the supply is much more than demand and prices come down. This is one kind of industry. On the other hand, if you take shoes, right? Now, the total number of shoes consumed in India is probably growing at 15 or 20% every year. And you are going to increase capacity if you set up a shoe factory by less than 0.1%. Therefore, you have made no difference to the demand supply situation, and therefore there is no price crash. So the size of capacity increase affects the rivalry among companies. And finally, you have the exit barrier, right? If it's difficult for you to leave the industry, once you've set up a plant, if nature of the industry is such that it is difficult for you to leave the industry, then you tend to stay in that industry, fight. And how will you fight? You will fight through a price war, right? And price war is damaging for every player in the industry. It increases rivalry within the industry. So these are factors which increase rivalry among industries. Now, let's look at some of these factors in a little more detail. Let's look at growth. Growth. An industry which is growing fast is an industry where rivalry is low. Because rivalry is low, it is an attractive industry to invest in, right? Look at the automobile industry, right? One would expect that there are fierce price wars in the automobile industry, but the price wars in the automobile industry are very, very benign wars. Why? Because of a rapid increase in the growth of the industry. In fact, in the last couple of years, when the growth rate of the industry has slowed down, that is when we are seeing price wars in this industry.